Joining me now on the Knicks Film School podcast, a returning guest, although it's been a while, which we're gonna talk about that. Some stuff has happened in the last 3 years, but I mean, time is a flat circle. Yeah, I was about to say, is it really? He is a reporter. He has had his work featured just about everywhere. The Daily, I want to make sure I don't miss anything, so I'm just reading from his Twitter bio. The Daily Beast, Deadspin, Huffington Post, Politico, ESPN, New Republic, Vice, The Times, and Guardian.
ESPN. I've had a couple of ESPN stories too, I guess.
Did I say ESPN? Did I skip over ESPN?
I don't know. I might not have put it in the Twitter bio.
ESPN deserves a second mention, even sure. So. The worldwide leader.
I have been published by the worldwide leader. It's true.
That's a cool thing to say.
It is cool. It was cool. I got to work. I think Kevin Arnovitz was my main editor on one of the ESPN stories, and he was great to work with. So shout out to Kevin Arnovitz.
I like it whenever Arnovitz comes on the Low Post drink. Yeah. Anyway, Robert Silverman, thank you for coming back on the show. I will start by just saying what a journey it's been since I slid into your DMs probably 4.5 years ago when I was like I don't know. I probably had a couple hundred Twitter followers.
I think it was like 2017 probably.
Yeah. So about 5 years ago. And I was like, hey, I want to be a writer. Can you give me some tips on writing? How do I write things? And you were like, you fucking idiot. No, you didn't say that, thankfully.
I think my exact words were run screaming for the hills. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. What are you thinking? Leave, stop, turn around, do something else. Become a basket weaver. The world always needs baskets. The world always needs baskets. Yes. Let me just say, man, your work is awesome. I read it on the daily. It's a delight having you cover the Knicks. And I am blown away by the kind of written output you put out every single day, let alone the podcasts.
Thank you.
You should act like it's all on you, man. It's you.
Listen, I think that your advice early on was just like, I mean, I don't remember. I do actually remember the gist of it.
It was just the gist of like, figure out what you want to say and say it as direct and say it as honestly as possible. And just,
as honestly and as directly as possible.
Yeah. That's, I think, what I said.
Which was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, because as how I felt, at least, or how I feel in retrospect, when you're just starting out writing, you're just trying to make everything sound good, and you try to expend so many words to try to make the thing sound good until you realize, like, wait a minute, let me just say what the fuck I have to say, and then
say what you want to say. Look, I struggle with that all the time. I write these sentences that I think are pretty and beautiful and insightful and fantastic and filled with Italianate turns of phrase. And then I read them and I think to myself, shut the fuck up. Just say the thing say it as simply and directly as possible. And you can't worry about if it's good writing, because it's an impossible subjective standard and there's no way to define it. And the only thing you can do is try to say like, look, I'm trying to explain this to you. The important thing is how it lands with the audience, not how it makes you feel writing it. Does the audience understand what you're saying? And if they didn't understand what you wanted to say, well, then you screwed up somewhere along the line. So maybe try to say it more simply. Sometimes that means take, another couple of paragraphs to figure out how you want to say it. But the goal is how it impacts the people who are reading it. And figure that out. And the rest will fall into line. I like it. It's good advice. And I've gotten that from a number of different editors who've said it to me in various ways. And yet, it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone could do it. It's not. I tell my daughter that already. She's not yet 6 years old. And whenever she complains about something, I'm like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. I referenced the last time we spoke on this podcast, which was June 30th of 2019, which was a day when the Knicks, the thing that many thought... That was the day.
That was the day.
The day when people thought it would doom the Knicks franchise when they lost out on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant was the last time we spoke. I wrote something. I think I wrote something that day for the Daily Beast about every now and then the Daily Beast lets me go off on the Knicks. They're like, could you write some Knicks content for us? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I think I wrote about how they were getting clowned on, and they were getting clowned on. But it's like, that story that Philip Seymour Hoffman tells in Charlie Wilson's War about the Zen monk and the little boy and the pony. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, now here we are, 3 years later.
We are.
The Nets, they had their latest Kevin Durant trade rumor pop up yesterday as we are recording this. And the Knicks, look, your piece that you wrote recently for D Magazine talked about the kind of the
magazine for people who love the letter D, by the way, if you're not
yes. And
all things D.
All things D. If your name starts with D, you should read D Magazine.
Yes.
No, but in addition to writing about the ties between the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks, you also wrote about how there is a familiar feeling to how this summer has gone. Now, this is before the Donovan Mitchell rumors really jumped up
into high gear. Yeah,
into high gear. We'll get to those in a second because I want to pick your brain on that too. But I don't want to. You've been someone who has been vocal over the years about the way that the owner has run this basketball team. And his latest big move was to hire Leon Rose in Worldwide West. And the way that Leon Rose and Worldwide West have run the team in the 2.5 years that they've been here, as you very eloquently pointed out, has been this kind of family. It's all in the family, right?
I know. It was interesting. It was really funny to hear the quotes that came out of Jalen Brunson days after he finally actually did sign, when he said actually the same thing that was in the article, which is, I'm here because I want to be a part of the family. And, this is, I don't think I got into it in detail. That I used a hyperlink. I didn't go in really delve, but Henry Abbott over at Drew wrote about this back in after Lynn left the Knicks for Houston. What Henry Abbott did is he wrote this postmortem, I think it was in 2013 that he wrote it, about the connections between Carmelo Anthony, the larger CAA family, and the Knicks, which is that Carmelo Anthony very much had this vision of building a team based on these perceived familial bonds. And Jeremy Lin did not fit into that world. And so he had to go. Was the main takeaway, I think, or one of the main takeaways from that piece. And that it just didn't, that Melo believed, for whatever reason, and there are a lot of complex reasons having to do with mainly some rightful jealousy about the fact that Lin was turned into the most beloved superstar, not just in New York, but in the entire sports world, and for a good 2-week period. And Carmelo Anthony, who had been, already an all-star, already a player who could lead a team to the Western Conference Finals, already one of the, probably at the time, the 10 best players in the league.
Sure. Yeah.
Never got that kind of love from New York fans. And so I think it's understandable why he responded that way. You can say he shouldn't have done that. But the jealousy is, I think on a human level, you can understand why he might feel that way. Now, yeah, the Knicks have always, even during the times when their front office hasn't been particularly well run, and I think it's obviously a lot better run than it now. The point that I was making in the article is that they're still using these same operating principles, which is that some other team's star must be imported in order to win. And that star must also have certain, let's say, financial or contract-based alliances that extend beyond off the court. And it's not that it can't work as a team building strategy. It obviously can't. There are a nearly infinite number of ways to skin this particular NBA cat and build a team that is sustainable and successful. What I was trying to say in the article is, it reminds me of all of the, it gets me right in the feels, and it reminds me of all the ways in which this plan has not worked to date, which I think you can probably say stretches back since the year 2000. And so, on a purely just emotional, how am I as a human being dealing with this team that I care so much about? I had an instinctive reaction to be like, no, I want something else. I want something different, regardless of whether it works or not. I am being triggered I am triggered by the Knicks signing of Jalen Brunson, and it's reminding me of all the other. It's reminding me of them trading the farm for Marbury. It's reminding me of them trading the farm for Eddie Curry. It's a reminder of them signing Amari Stoudemire when LeBron told them to get bent. It's a reminder of all of those ways in which they were told that actually this next star is the one who's going to save New York. And you honestly, admit they've been trying that.
They have
for years. Yeah.
But you even admit in the piece, because you're in addition to being a brilliant writer, you're also a smart enough Knicks fan, I think, to know that like signing Brunson for what is maybe a slight overpay, but it's a commensurate deal.
It absolutely is a good trade. There's nothing to complain about that.
Or a signing, because it wasn't a trade. Like, you're smart enough to know that is not on par in a basketball sense with the Marbury, the Curry thing, and even honestly the Stoudemire thing, because the issues with his knees. But it's the feels that it gives you.
Yes, it's just it's the vibes, man. Yeah. We're all about vibes here. The vibes do not vibe with my vibes. The vibes, I want a vibe shift is what I'm asking for.
I actually want to challenge what you just said about can it work, because can it work this way, building a team this way, where and I always have to couch this. We love RJ Barrett here at Knicks Film School. It is when we talk about a homegrown star, I think you could maybe characterize him as a star. I am not willing to yet put him in the category of going to be one of the two best players on a championship team. So, and the reason I go on that little diatribe, as I feel like I always have to, is you look around the league and like teams that traditionally win or at least in the conversation of like, oh, they should be the ones trading for Donovan Mitchell, not the Knicks. 2/3 of them have drafted a guy, which, even if you have to squint a little bit, like it can be maybe the guy.
This strategy that they're trying, I believe, is entirely dependent on RJ Barrett or one of the kids becoming an all-star.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, then in 2 years, we're talking about shipping all these guys off. We're stripping the team back down to the studs and selling everyone off for parts.
Yeah. So like and this is why I wrote this several weeks ago when the Mitchell rumors first popped up. It's like whether they trade for Mitchell or they don't trade for Mitchell, either way, this is ice skating uphill because they have not positioned themselves to tank in the next few years. So there is no obvious path that way to get the star in the draft. And if they trade a bunch for Mitchell, it's going to be really tough to get the second guy unless
I watched your podcast yesterday with Jeremy breaking down all the possible implications of the cap trade and my head turned at least twice into the Zach Galifianakis numbers are spinning all around my head.
But that's where it has to be, because it is going to take just such a set of circumstances to get from point A, assuming point A is Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, we should throw him in there too, because he's a really good player, and RJ Barrett, to get from there to point B. And it's a tough way to go. And I don't know if this is too far a bridge to or too far a gap to bridge, but that's why I want to ask you, because you also, this other concept of the feels being the same, where it ultimately comes down to there's the people that run this team and have been running this team for 20 years. There is theoretically at least, there is a trust factor between the owner, not the ownership. He's one man. He's one guy. One man.
And we're going to talk about that one guy, by the way. We're
going to talk about that between him and the people running the team, in that he trusts them and he empowers them to do whatever he's going to do. And then there's a question of, well, how do those people continue to earn his trust, and what are the decisions that are being made? Are they necessarily in the best interest of the basketball team? And like, because again, we could go 2.5 years ago when he hired Leon Rose. There were a lot of people wanted him to hire Masai Ujiri. Now he doesn't have
assuming he could have gotten
paid
him. Yeah. I don't know why Masai would leave Toronto.
I don't know why either.
Yes. The money, Lebowski. Even if he had just brought in a literal wheelbarrow filled filled with those Walter White stacks of cash. I don't know if Masai Ujiri would have said, I am going to leave a stable team situation for the Knicks, no matter how much money, how many Dolan bucks he might have put.
And why? I mean, why is that? Let's
actually look at this. Have the Knicks ever? We just said if it doesn't work out. By the way, if the Knicks aren't able to concoct a second star to go alongside even Donovan Mitchell, if Brunson doesn't make another miraculous leap, if RJ Barrett doesn't become the player a lot of people think he can be, if they trade for Donovan Mitchell and he just stays at this level, and you say, well, in 2 years then they got to tear it down and start all over again. Will they? No. You know why? Because the Knicks have. Look, I find tanking to be, as a fundamental level, as a moral act in terms of just the basic relationship between me, consumer, and the team product. I find it to be fundamentally immoral and awful. But as a team building strategy, it is considered best practices pretty much throughout all of the major pro sports.
Yep.
The Knicks have never done it.
They did it for 1 year.
Never. No, they didn't. The Knicks have never.
When they got RJ Barrett, they did willingly tank one season, but it wasn't the type of tank that you're talking about, which occurs over multiple seasons, because the intention was always for it to be one season and one season only because of who they planned to sign that summer. So I guess in a sense,
right,
no, they've never.
That's
really
what I mean. They had 1 year where they didn't. The point at the beginning of the year, by the way, was not to be awful in that season. That was not the plan. It became self-evident within, I don't know, the first time the ball was dropped to Tarrytown, but it became self-evident soon enough. And then as soon as they got RJ Barrett, they began signing. They signed Randall, they signed Bobby Portis, they signed Tom, they signed an entire phalanx of power forwards, and that was the end of it. The Knicks have, even that first year when they were awful and they got Porzingis in 2014, 2015, Phil's first year. That was not the plan. They thought that Calderon and Sam Dalembert and those guys, and I believe Alexei Shved was the star of that team for a hot minute. I wrote a blog for Vice in which I compared Alexei Shved to the viral popularity of Russian car cam crash videos, and I stand by that take. They never tried to tank during the Isaiah years. They didn't even try to tank during the first 2 years of the D'Antoni regime. They have never executed. The Knicks have never executed what most would consider a traditional long-term team building plan. And that was really the point of what I was writing in that article. It's like, I would like to see them try, because not just because I think it would lead to better results. The fields are strewn with the corpses of failed teams who have tried this plan and failed miserably. Not because I think it'll necessarily work better. It's because I find rooting for these guys over a considerable period of time, watching them grow, watching them develop, learning all the nuances of the game, I find it to be a more interesting and profound fan experience, and one that's honestly less rings and title dependent, because my personal belief is that as long as James Dolan is running the team, they will never win the title. Full stop. Never. It can't happen.
And I think your point about Masai not being a realistic option in terms of why would he leave what is, by all accounts, a very nice situation in Toronto. I mean, putting aside the team, just he certainly seems to have full autonomy.
Toronto's a beautiful city.
Fantastic.
No one denies that.
A ton of reasons why he should not want to leave there, but I'll bring it back to that trust part of it, where
if Masai Ujiri was given the giant mega millions wad of cash from Dolan, and he said yes, let's assume that happens. The first thing he would want to do is clean out the entire front office from top to bottom, install his guys, and rework all kinds of systems, basically at every level of the organization. No Knicks president of basketball operations under James Dolan has really been allowed to do that. And I don't think Masai would either. I mean, if you go to NBA.com and you look at the listing on the Knicks front office, you will see people who have been there who were there when it was just Scott Perry and
Mills.
Steve Mills.
Yeah.
I forgot his name.
How dare you, sir?
He's been around so long, and yet I forgot Steve Mills's name. Scott Perry and Steve. There were guys who were there when Scott Perry and Steve Mills were in charge. There are guys who were there when Phil Jackson was in charge. There were guys who were there when Glenn Grunwald, different guy. My worlds are combining. Don't put Glenn Grunwald in charge of the Knicks. I think that would end badly. But when Glenn Grunwald was there were guys who were left over when Walsh was there, and on and on and on and on. To the vast history of recorded time, and you wonder, well, that person must be incredibly good at their job if they've lasted in this for 15 years, or there is another possible reason, which is that the owner has developed an affinity for them, and they perform certain roles that the owner wants performed without getting into excessive detail. And so Masai would never take over unless he was given carte blanche to really install people. And if you really want to be paranoid, you can say, well, one of the reasons Leon Rose was hired is because Dolan was familiar with him for years because of the team's deep ties to CAA, and because he's not the kind of executive who has a well-stocked Rolodex of up-and-coming front office talent who he can immediately say, well, I'm going to plug in this guy, and I'm going to remake this organization in my image, because he has no idea what that image is to be like, at least when he's first starting out. So, okay, that's a long-winded.
Well, no, I think
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you phrase it well. And the other thing I think Masai would have wanted to do, in addition to stripping down the behind the scenes to the nails, would be probably to strip down the what's on the basketball court down to the nails, and engage in what it sure seemed like he was planning to do with Toronto when he tried to trade Kyle Lowry to the Knicks in what was it, 2013 or 14?
It's early 2013. The trade was locked in.
Yeah.
It was going to be, I believe, Lowry for cap filler and Iman Shumpert and a first-round draft pick. And the trade was going to happen, but according to reports, James Dolan said no because he was still angry about Masai and absolutely fleecing him on the Bargnani trade.
So that's what I think he would have done, which, again, it takes a level of trust between your president of basketball operations and your owner to say, look, we're going to lose, and we're going to lose a lot of games, and we're going to lose a lot of games, and we are going to be the butt of jokes for several years. Here's the silver lining. I promised myself I would get here, because you are the pessimist and I am the optimist. Here's my silver lining. With the caveat that this is talking ourselves into the best that things can be under this owner. I'm going to say, I think this is the best that things could be under this owner. And here's why. I think there is so much trust between him and Leon for all of the reasons you just explored earlier, because of all the we don't need to go over it, but CAA, the 3 letters, there's your reason, CAA, that he is letting Leon, look, go do it. I'm not going to bother you, to the point where, and I don't know if I really believe this. I
am in a group chat filled with lots of bitter middle-aged Knicks fans like myself, and you guys can. I'll get you guys an invite if you want. There's some rude jokes, and we
put us on the wait list.
There's some sad, if you want to hang out with some sad men, that's the place to be, who also like the Knicks. In any case, I'm in a group chat with these gentlemen. As soon as the Donovan Mitchell rumors hit, we immediately began having flashbacks, and all of us assumed that at some point James Dolan would start throwing pieces into the trade, like adding kindling to a fire. We all assumed it would happen. We expected it to happen. And so far it hasn't happened. I mean, there's still, clock's still ticking, but the fact that they have managed that reportedly they have a price they will not go above, and that ownership is not just sort of, coming barreling into the door like the Kool-Aid Man, if the Kool-Aid Man also was playing the harmonica, and insisted that somehow they get to throw Timothy Mozgov into the deal again for some reason.
Could we sign Mozgov today to put him in the deal?
The point is, you're correct. I think given the paradigm that this owner I think is fundamentally incapable of letting go of. This is the best iteration of that. And, I really just want to root for, I just want to watch some teams that are fun and that I like. It's why I don't want them to give up, Obi Toppin or Quickly or any of those kids, not even because of sound basketball principles. It's just because I have enjoyed watching those guys grow and develop. And I have an affinity for them that has nothing to do with the final score of a game. And so I'd like to see them hang around and see what they might become. It could all end very badly.
It could.
I like those guys. Yeah.
It could end badly, and we'll see how this goes. But the other thing, and I have to, the intellectual part of me can certainly look back and say it would have been better to trade Julius Randle 15 or 20 games into the 2020-21 season and then proceed to try to lose as many games as possible and play Obi Toppin 100 minutes a game and Emmanuel Quickly and the whole thing. Right. But at the same time, and I know Andrew has spoken about this a lot, and I'll speak for both of us and Jeremy and everybody here at KFS. That season was incredibly meaningful for us as Knicks fans, and also incredibly meaningful professionally.
Yeah. Well, look, this is the thing that amazing. While I understand the logic of literally just ripping the copper wiring out of the walls and rebuilding a team and selling off everything valuable, that was a great year. I love that year. I loved watching Julius Randle that year. He was, to me, watching the old school aspects of his game, the utterly inefficient, clearly unsustainable aspects of his game, those series of low post moves, the jabs and the feints, that gave me, that reminded me at times of watching Bernard King. And that's why I enjoyed it. And Bernard is my favorite Knick. Bernard is the Knick I grew up loving as a kid. You cannot convince me that any Knick will ever be better than Bernard King was for about 2 years. And that was bing bong or not, that was a great year. And yes, you're right. I don't think they should. I think there is value. I think there is a moral and even an economic and a long-term team building value in providing pleasurable moments for your fan base. And I don't think that should ever be discounted. That was a great year. I loved it.
Yeah, it was fun.
I hate Trae Young. I love hating Trae Young.
Fuck Trae Young is the unofficial motto of this podcast.
Fuck Trae Young.
We'll see what happens with the Mitchell stuff. I do think the longer this goes, the better it is. It's going to be the kind of I have no sources on this, but my best guess is that it's going to be the kind of trade where a certain percentage of the fans are going to get mad because they feel like they gave up too much. There's another contingent that is going to say that it's a steal. It will not be the haul that Danny Ainge covets in his heart of hearts, nor will it be the Jazz give him up for peanuts. It'll be something where there'll be meat on the bone for everybody to chew on, and I think it'll be, but we'll see. In my mind, it kind of has to happen. I can't remember a trade in NBA history where there was this much smoke and gossip and talk and leaks and respectable sources and unrespectable sources giving out information about when it's going to happen and having it then not be consummated. I think it will. It's just a question of when. I agree with you. And I also want to double down on, I know you didn't really say it in this context, but I have said it in this context, which is that I do think it needs to happen. Not that it would be the end of the world.
I've heard you. I think the question is does Leon Rose have a walkaway price? And does he have is ownership willing to say willing to go to him, or ownership? That one guy, if Leon Rose goes to that one guy and says they will not bend on this, I will not bend on this, we're walking away, is that going to in some way imperil his job status? That's the question. I think you're hinting.
I have to throw in a movie reference here.
Sure. Is it Heat? Is it De Niro in Heat?
He will walk away and you will let him, and then he throws something against them.
Yeah.
Inside of
are you excited for the Michael Mann novel that's a prequel and a sequel to Heat?
I have heard about this. I will be purchasing it.
Heat is one of my go-to movies. Anytime there's no game, there are no Mets. Let's go Mets, Andrew. There are no Mets games. There is no streaming content that I particularly want to watch. I could always watch Heat again. Heat and Michael Clayton are my two. Okay, well, there's nothing on, but I'm going to watch Michael Clayton. And the Michael Clayton quote fits here too. It's Tom Wilkinson saying, "Do you have the horses? It's not what you know, and it's not what you believe. Do you have the horses? And if you don't, then what are we doing here?"
I love it. I think there is a walkaway price, and I don't want them to go above that walkaway price. But this is why I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. With the understanding that you do not go above the level of absurdity, whatever that line of absurdity is, with the understanding you don't go above it.
I kind of think if the Knicks can't consummate this trade, let's say Toronto, instead of overpaying, instead of giving up Scotty Barnes, which they won't do, for Durant, decides to turn a package involving Siakam and Trent into Donovan Mitchell or something to that effect. I don't have trade NBA up in front of me.
Probably OG, Trent and a bunch of picks. Yeah.
Right. Let's say they put together a package that in terms of talent is superior to the Knicks, but draft capital is less. And they snag Donovan Mitchell, which, by the way, would not be the craziest thing for Toronto to do. Let's say they do. I don't think it means Dolan is starting to, is looking around for someone else to run the team. I think not. You may do,
No, I don't disagree. The reason I'm shaking my head is I think the reason why I feel the way I feel, or I feel as strongly as I do about wanting very much for them to complete this trade, is because given the fact that this is, as we've discussed, the path that this front office has laid out to trade for star number one and then ostensibly attract star number two and have enough left over to trade for him, I don't see another obvious name. Now, look, we've said this in the past, and then somebody else comes up. But what I think is instructive is like just this week, right? Just this week, Kevin Durant. He's been on the trade market for a while, but like Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown's a star, right? I don't know if he could be the best player in it.
The Nets should take that deal. The Nets, if Boston offered, even without Marcus Smart thrown in,
I agree.
Even if the deal is Derek White, Jalen Brown, and some picks. Or Grant Williams or something, thrown in or something like that, the Nets should say yes and thank you.
So people will be like, "Well, Jalen Brown, great. He'd be a great fit on the Knicks, right?" Yeah, well, guess what? That trade can't not that it can't happen. It's not going to happen between the Celtics and the Knicks for 1,000 reasons. First of which is that's not the trade that the Celtics are trying to make. They're trying to trade Jalen Brown to get Kevin Durant.
They're trying to get a player who is top 5 at worst in the NBA right now and clearly somewhere in the top 20 in NBA history.
Yeah. And so it's not about a star coming on the market. It's about a star coming on the market that makes sense for your franchise, where you're at the time that you're making the trade, and you having the package that makes sense for the team that is trading the star. And like that, that lines up here. So the fact that it lines up, I think, again,
yeah, that's the trade that everyone's going to lose their bits over, is that Kevin Durant is somehow going to be traded for what's perceived as possibly less than Rudy Gobert, just because of the market conditions that you described. We've gone long, and we haven't even gotten into ethics and Knicks journalism, which was also a point of contention. Do we want to do it? Do we want to save it for another time, or we want to leave it? It's on you.
Well, hold on. I want to finish. We'll get to it, but I want to finish the Durant point really quickly. Okay, as an NBA fan,
yes.
Are you worried that this is the state of things, where essentially it is on a basketball player to not give a shit?
Right. There was I thought the Adam Silver quote that he gave during the Vegas Summer League was kind of instructive, in which he basically said, "I don't like this, that players who sign multi-year contracts can just ask for trades and leave. And I don't think it puts that the focus is now on all this offseason and gossip and rumor hurly-burly, and not on what happens actually on the court." And my response to that is pretty much, gee, I wonder how we got to this point. What league very much made it clear that to true diehard fans, in order to appreciate the sport, you had to be tweeting out "this league!" exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, number one, exclamation point, every time there was like a Shams or a Woj post. What leagues celebrated the idea that NBA basketball is a 12-month year-round experience because of all of the attendant noise surrounding possible transactions? The NBA did that. That's the bed they made. And I'm really sorry if they don't like how it turned out in terms of retaining actual fans to watch games, because they are, even accounting in for, cord cutting and the number of people who consume NBA content in different ways, the NBA is objectively losing viewers. And once LeBron retires and Steph Curry retires, this league is in a lot of trouble in terms of attendance. Now, I don't really care about that because I can still watch the Knicks in any case. And the NBA's bottom line is not something that worries me or even really interests me that much. But to your point, I think the fact that this is the current state of affairs, the league really needs to look into a mirror and wonder out how they got there. So if they are upset about it, it is their own doing, and I have very little sympathy. As a person who consumes NBA games, who likes watching NBA games, yeah, it's probably not for the best. But one, there was probably a different path, and the NBA chose not to take it. And two, yeah. I do believe in, as someone who supports labor and solidarity, I think on a fundamental level, these guys should be able to choose where they want to work. And that's where I come down. And as much as as a fan, I think it might be cooler if, I don't know, Durant had stayed in Oklahoma City and built a decade-long rivalry with Steph Curry. That would have been, in a Bird Magic way, yeah, objectively, that would have been fun to watch. But I can't take my own my desires for the kind of game I want to watch and say, actually, yeah, but players should be subjected to de facto and very well played indentured servitude in order for that to happen. Yeah,
I'm with you. And the thing that I like that is a byproduct of the player empowerment era is that when you have a Dirk or a Steph or a Timmy, it means more than yes, Patrick. Well, we won't count the last few years, but more or less.
Patrick retired in the year 2000. I don't know what you're talking about. That was it. Tough series against the Raptors, and he hung them up, and that was it. That was it.
No, but I'm not going to say it doesn't mean a lot that Patrick Ewing played pretty much all of his career with the Knicks and let Malone with the Jazz and all those guys. It does, but I do think it means more. Now, all right. It would be disingenuous of me not to at least
have a brief chat
about. Here's I'm going to say my thing, which I have not spoken on this on the podcast yet, so I've been saving it.
Speak on it. Speak your truth. Testify. Am I blowing out or am I encouraging bad behavior? Which one is it? Little column A, little column B. Go for it.
For years, I would get extraordinarily more than I should have. I let it get to me more than I had any right to, because I'm a person that has other things going on in my life. Extraordinarily peeved when
that's what sources say. Yes, I've heard that.
When Knicks beat writers would be writing about or tweeting about the Knicks in a way where it seemed it was perceived by me to be needling the team, and that was years ago. And then over the last few years, a few things have changed, which that's what I want to say up front. Do not allow me to objectively speak about this topic because, one, I've gotten to know all these guys, and I've told this story before, I'll say it again. Steph Bondi has, given the Knicks a lot of shit over the years. Took me under his wing the year that I wrote about the team for Sports Illustrated, and was there in the media, showing me around, pointing me the amazing human being, just incredibly nice guy. Didn't need to do that at all. And the list goes on. Even Berman, Berman's a strange duck. I would tell him that to his face. I have told him that to his face. But he's
Berman is an institution at this point.
Yeah, he is. He does stuff that's just weird. But you
can clown on some of his prose stylings. You can or his tweets on social media, et cetera, et cetera. Don't.
But he's Berman.
You're gonna hate him. He's Berman to the post.
He's Berman to the post. So, and I've shared a train with Berman. We sat and, shot the shit coming back from Knicks game. So, I can't speak about this objectively because these people, I consider these people my friends. I hope they do too. That's number one.
Colleagues too.
Listen,
I said it. So what?
You're very kind.
Shut up.
That's number one. And number two, I don't know. Choose my words carefully here.
Yeah.
As I've been doing this over the last few years, I've tried to make inroads with the Knicks in terms of access and things that I've asked for. And I usually politely get told to go on my merry way. And I know that would not be the case if I was covering probably any one of 29.
Well, there are a couple that'll still get it.
Yeah, sure. There's a few.
Sure. But the Knicks really look, just to give readers some context, the point is historically, and I know this is let's just take as a given that historically the Knicks relationship with the press, that includes the local press, the beat guys, the digital content creator class, let's call them, and the national basketball sporting press, all of them have said, and this is going on 20 years, that dealing with the Knicks when you are trying to cover this team, either in the short term or the long term, is uniquely difficult, that the Knicks are not just, and the more critical ones about the Knicks media, the relationship with media, will say that the Knicks are not just paranoid, but vengeful, and that they keep score and they will enact that they don't let things go. And this has been a case for a long time. Now, this came to a head, as I'm sure all these listeners know, because the Knicks held a press conference for Donovan Mitchell. And
Jalen Brunson. They didn't have the fan event for Donovan Mitchell yet.
Right. They held a press event
There you go.
A press event, which was just the MSG network. So it wasn't a press event. It was they were rolling out the new Ford F-150 this year is what they were doing. And JD Power and Associates were very impressed with their handiwork. But they didn't invite anyone from the actual, aside from their in-house media organ. And so beat writers and national NBA reporters got mad about it. And they said this was wrong. And a certain contingent of the fans said, yeah, but you guys do the thing that you have expressed hostility towards, which is come across as if they are trolling or needling or needlessly taking shots at the team. I have a couple thoughts on this.
Well, let me just finish what I'm going to say briefly. My point that I was going to make is that I, for years, felt the exact same way that it seems like a lot of fans feel right now, which is that
large percentage.
I don't care that you don't get into that press conference because I don't care about the questions that you're going to ask Jalen Brunson or Leon Rose or anything. I get my information from where I get it from. The questions that you're going to ask and the answers that you're going to get don't really matter to me as a Knicks fan. And when there is this pre-existing, at times, antagonistic relationship, or at least perceived to be as such, between the fan base and some of the people who cover the team, when you get people who cover the team then saying this is not okay, it is a natural opportunity for fans to jump up and say, basically, I don't, go complain somewhere. Who cares?
Go sit on attack. It's not my problem. I
exactly.
I find what you do pointless and useless. And so why do I care about your petty complaints?
Even if I don't even know if the majority of the fan base has gone that far, but whatever. There's varying degrees to people who have this point. The last thing I want to say is this, where I have to come down on this, and just to be honest, is I've started to look at it more from the perspective of the Knicks end of it, which is why, if I'm James Dolan, am I not going to give unfettered access? Whereas 20 some odd other, again, there are a few teams out there who are not great either. But for the most part, every other NBA team is look, we're going to allow the people who cover this team to just cover the team. And as someone who who does believe in press and freedom of press and as being a good thing and a healthy thing for our society. And yet, as I say that, I catch myself because it's sports. I know.
Right, it is.
But it's part of the society. And I think
let me just take one example. There was a report that was put out last year. I think it was last year. Yes, it was last year. About COVID policies and how they would affect the Yankees and the Mets. And the answer to that question was just because a Daily News reporter was in the room and was able to ask those questions and was able to then they called up the mayor's office and they said, look, here are the questions that I have. How do they pertain to this baseball team? Does the fact that certain unvaccinated Yankees might not be able to travel to Toronto or might not be able to play this year, does that change? Does that change a lot materially for anyone's life conditions? No, probably not. But they got to do it because they were in the room. And there's a value, you don't know, you cannot look at it and say okay, it was a press conference for Jalen Brunson. Maybe someone would have asked a rude question about Donovan Mitchell and it would have spoiled their feel-good vibes. Maybe, but you know what? There's easy enough to say so the first person asks that, you say thanks guys, we cannot, by league rules, we're not allowed to comment on players that are on other teams. And we're just not going to comment on that. Thank you for asking. Done.
Yeah.
Then from the Knicks point of view, bottom line wise, there is no reason for them to cooperate with anyone. It does there are teams who require local media in order to help build attention with the team still. There are teams that see that as a positive thing. The Knicks could never if the Knicks never did another press conference again, it would not shed a single dollar. It would not cause one person to not show up.
Can I just
There's no incentive for them
briefly? I want to push back on that from this very, very specific perspective. And this is what has bothered me about their stance on the media in the past. There are teams out there whose beat reporters, I don't know how else to say this, wave pom-poms for the team. And if you read the writing of beat reporters out there I'm not going to say names or outlets or anything, but just go pick up something, a newspaper, a piece written for an online publication.
A what? You mentioned
those still do. I saw them in my local bodega this morning.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But they are. They're not. I won't go so far as to say they are like an arm of the team, but it is very, very, very.
The Knicks,
positive.
Every New York team for decades has been subjected to adversarial coverage. The tabloids function like tabloids. They are powered by vinegar, snark, and bile, and always, and have been for at least as long as I've been reading them.
And that's the difference about New York and all the other markets.
Yeah, and so the Knicks don't like that, and they don't like the way they're portrayed. Okay. For me, it's not just about press. Look, I as I mentioned earlier in the pod, I don't really write about basketball that much anymore. So I rarely even write about sports that much anymore. I tend to cover a lot of far right online figureheads in the communities that surround them. I'm on, as I've been told, I'm on the shithead beat.
And we thank you for your service.
You're welcome. My Ben Collins, who's a friend of mine and an outstanding reporter, refers to it as the dystopia beat. So pick both of which I think are solid contributors. But in all of those communities, what you would call the mainstream of the traditional press is absolutely loathed, hated. They hate them. They hate them with the fire of 1,000 suns. Yeah. The phrase when certain political figures talk about the press being the enemy of the people, they take that ish literally. And I know just from look, I don't get nearly the amount of threats of violence and ethnic slurs that I hear all the time, or just incredibly rude things said to me that a lot of other reporters do. Being a middle-aged washed white dude has its advantages in certain moments, and this is one of them. But I've had threats of violence, and a couple of them have legitimately made me go, ooh, that's not just talking trash online. That's real. And again, that is a minuscule amount compared to a lot of other people who cover this. So I am very well aware that in a lot of American society, the press is absolutely hated. You can go to a Gallup approval poll and see this in numbers. This has filtered. This is not just a Knicks thing. It has filtered down to sports. And it's not just necessarily about hatred of the press, qua hatred of the press. It is that so many parts of life now are treated as fandoms. We treat political community, we treat politicians we like, we treat them as fans. And that is regardless of political valence. You can say that about
100%.
Ron DeSantis just as easily as you can say it as about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I stand queen. You can say that about either of them, right? You can. It is that, and it's. I think this is a much longer conversation, but it's the degree to which actual in-person online communities and institutions have become so degraded that we treat everything like a fandom and a self-created community that has been built largely online. And the rules for those communities, when someone attacks those communities, allow for a lot of anger and violent behavior that would never come up if it were mainly derived from real world experiences. And you see that anger and that sense of anger and that sense of resentment, and that sense of isolation and that sense of loneliness now beginning to burble out into the real world too, where people are saying things to each other, say in school board meetings, that would never have been said in the past. And this is something, in that beat, this is something that absolutely, it terrifies me. I am scared of it. I am worried about it, to say the least, and I have zero idea how to fix it. But I think it would be naive to think that this hasn't crept into sports fandom as a whole also, and Knicks fandom in particular, which was already seeded with a certain degree of fans who feel that the Knicks press hates them. That the Knicks press not only hates the team, but I think the difference is that the fans who were like, yeah, go get bent, Bondi. I don't care that you didn't get to go to this press conference. I think they think that Steph Bondi hates them personally. Yeah. And they feel that any attack on the team is translated into an attack on them. And
by the way, your point about the online nature of our lives nowadays, that it's so fundamental to this because things do kind of get lost in translation over whether it's a computer screen or over a phone screen.
10 years ago, when I first joined Twitter, I remember thinking,
congratulations on your anniversary.
No, sorry, it's 12. I joined Twitter in the summer of 2010 to follow, I believe, the LeBron James Knicks sweepstakes, because I saw on various blogs that the information was coming faster on this one website, and I thought, well, I better join that then. But like, I remember thinking then, like, look at all these there are famous people on this microblogging website. They might get to hear what I have to say. There was a very sad conversation I think I recalled having a back and forth with like Andrew Breitbart in 2011. And there was a certain thrill of being able to say, like, when I told him some rude things, he actually had to read them. And like, if I were face to face with Andrew Breitbart before he passed, of course I wouldn't do that. Look, full disclosure, I was at a party pre-COVID, and Ann Coulter was there. And I disagree with Ann Coulter on a great many things, to say the least. Did I go up and throw a drink in her face? No, I didn't, because you don't do that. No. And whatever thoughts and feelings I may have about Ann Coulter, you don't throw a drink in someone's face, but all these websites allow you to metaphorically throw a drink in someone's face each and every hour of the day, and for as much as you want, and suffer very little repercussions, if none, if doing so. And if you play your cards right, you can even get a certain amount of viral attention and fame for throwing a drink in someone's face. Well, it, in fact, encourages this kind of behavior.
Bob, as someone who has had a drink thrown in their face, let me tell you.
Literally? Have you literally had a drink thrown in your face?
Okay, well, this will be a good way to end this with this story. When I was one of my latter years of bartending, I was a Saturday afternoon, and I was doing a place that offered a beer and wings deal for for a game watch, but only if you purchased the deal, you got to eat the chicken wings. You do not get to eat your friend's chicken wings if you have not purchased the deal. Right. And there were two.
No one denies this. Perfectly logical.
There were two patrons, two otherwise lovely young ladies, who took it upon themselves to eat their friend's chicken wings. And the friend had purchased the deal. They had not purchased the deal, Bob. And I told them several times, please do not eat those chicken wings. Those are not your chicken wings. And they continued to eat the chicken wings. And then I got a little fed up. And as a girl, one of the girls was about to take a bite of the chicken wing, I removed it from her hand and I threw it in the garbage. And she then picked up her beer and threw it in my face and walked out of the bar. And that is why it is not nice to throw drinks in people's faces.
Don't throw it. A beer is sticky. It's not easy to get out. Like, get a seltzer, man. You know, if you're going to...
I would have preferred it be a seltzer.
All right. Let me just to put one button on this.
Please, yes.
Brief talk about the internet and things. I understand fans who express those sentiments online. I would also say that if you got most of those fans face to face with any of the beat reporters who they feel like aren't doing them justice, the team or fans justice, the interactions would be wildly different. And so I feel like what this points to, not that I agree with fans who are expressing this because of my heartfelt belief in like a free press being necessary to a functioning democracy, like all of that, yes. But I feel like there are some larger societal aspects of play which are manifesting themselves in a fertile terrain vis-a-vis Knicks fans, I think is what I would say about that. So yeah, if you're mad, I get it. And and since the only way that people can really be mad these days is by posting, I think it's okay to recognize how we've gotten to this place and what's feeding that and whether that sentiment is as full-throated as it would be under different conditions.
There is a reason that I wanted to have you on to have this discussion, and I have no regrets. That was about it's as well phrased as I could imagine. This was fun. I don't think we pissed too many people off today. Andrew, did we piss too many people off today?
I failed.
We'll find out.
I failed. How can I torque it back?
You're excited to watch Jalen Brunson play basketball.
Jalen Brunson's a fraud. Clown fraud, Jalen Brunson.
You're going to love Jalen Brunson. You are going to love Jalen Brunson.
I'm sure I will. I dig undersized point guards. The thing about Jalen Brunson's game that's always struck me is that actually, if you're looking for another player whose offensive skill set is similar to Jalen Brunson, despite differences in size and body type and everything else, it's kind of Julius Randle. It's not
crazy at all. It's not crazy, except Jalen Brunson's incredibly more efficient.
Better at it and has done for a longer period of time. So yeah, as someone who was a Julius Randle liker circa, early 2021, I'm sure I will. Julius Randle, fraud.
There you go. That'll win you.
What else? Mike Breen, overrated hack.
Whoa.
Clyde Frazier, I'm tired of his shtick, man. He says the same thing 5 times. I'm sorry.
Bob has got off the deep end.
Ice cream. Staten. There, I don't know.
All right.
Nothing else. All right.
John, we haven't done this in a while. It's time to ban somebody from the Knicks Film School podcast.
Who?
Yeah. I mean, I was with you on the freedom of the press and the principle that coincides. Once you start talking about ice cream is when you hit my
favorite flavor of ice cream. Fair. Andrew, you go first.
I'm being canceled by the film school pod.
Yes, you are canceled.
Cancel culture.
Favorite flavor of ice cream. Come on, go.
Favorite flavor of ice cream? Butter pecan. When it's done right.
Forbidden chocolate from Friendly's.
Ooh.
I'll shout out local business, Ample Hills Creamery, not small local business.
Oh, that's nice.
But it is small business. It came from Gowanus. There's a flavor they have at, fittingly enough, their Gowanus location. It's very good. I don't know what's in it.
Rotting corpses and industrial runoff?
Well, the picture,
I don't know.
That picture that goes along with the flavor is like a man emerging from the Gowanus Canal. It's like a swamp man. It's very tasty. Anyway, most importantly, first of all, thank you for coming on. Robert Silverman, can you tell the folks at home, please, if they would like to find your stuff and engage with you further?
Yes, if you'd like to find me on the internet, you can always go to Twitter at Bob Sayeda. If you go to my author page at the Daily Beast, there are some blogs there. I think you'll like them. I've got a story which I just filed yesterday and is in edits and hopefully should be done in a couple of weeks, assuming once the lawyers get done going over it. Yeah, it's that kind of story that the legal needs to give it a thumbs up. So that's one I've been working on for about 3 months, I'm going to say. So it's been a long time coming. I got 2 more that are in the works soon. I'm going to have to be all coy about what they're about. But if you check, I'm sure I'll post about them incessantly. So if you follow me on Twitter at Bob Sayeta, BOBSAIETTA, I'm sure you can find you. I will post the links. And when John has me again, I will explain the long and storied backstory of the Bob Sayeta name. It's got twists and turns.
I think we said the same thing last time.
We
next
did.
Time.
We did. We did say that in 2019.
We will kick the can down the road once again to give folks something to look forward to for next time. It will not be another 3 years before you run again.
Set an egg timer. Thank you for having me. This was great, guys.